Firstly, each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves and the party's platform in an opening statement. After opening statements, our candidates will be asked a combination of questions. These are questions that were prepared by the Tri-City Chamber of Commerce. These questions will be mixed with questions from the audience by our Twitter hashtag or on cards you've written. Aaron behind me will help with that process as well. And we'll be asking candidates questions until our time is here. And based on a random selection that we just conducted, the candidates will generally speak in order. When we start the questions, we'll ask them to address the questions in the order that they were that we selected. The speaking order, which is from my right to your left, Paul Geddes, Joe Keighley, and Jody Wickens, as you see. So there's some semblance of order this evening, and so they're prepared to answer the question when it comes who's next, without having to interject. And we will encourage the candidates to challenge one another and to disagree where they want to, or agree if they should. And at the same time, at the end of the evening, the candidates again will be given up to 2 minutes at their discretion to provide some concluding statements again in the order of the random draw. So without further ado, Paul, this is Beaky Kelly getting it ready. If you'd like to begin with your 2-minute opening statement introduction of yourself.
Thank you for inviting me. My name is Paul Geddes. I've lived in Coquitlam for 25 years. My daughters have grown up here. They went to Eagle Ridge Montessori, Scott Creek Middle School. One went to Glen Eagle, and one went to the National Ballet School in Toronto. I've been an instructor in economics at Columbia College in Vancouver for, 30-some years now. You might have seen this. We just opened up our beautiful new campus on Terminal Avenue, very close to the Main Street Skyscraper station. Now, I'm representing something called the BC Libertarian Party. Libertarians stand for that word, liberty. We stand for people being allowed to do what they want with their own lives and their own property. This name is not new. Well, excuse me, the name is new. The idea isn't new because we are the real liberals. We're more liberal than the liberals. They just stole our name and they corrupted it. Now, we don't agree with paternalistic laws about alcohol, tobacco, drugs, or sex. Laws like this just drive these things underground where there's more harm and more violence. We also believe that people should be allowed to keep what they earn. We want voluntary institutions for education and healthcare and transportation. We just don't believe in a single-tier, top-down, government-controlled monopoly. It doesn't work. Now, you'll find a lot more about libertarians at our website.
30 seconds.
Libertarians.bc.ca. But I want to mention 2 issues here. Healthcare. I think something is going wrong here. We've had 30 years of an experiment of not allowing people to negotiate with their doctors, and it's catching up with us. Waiting lists are getting longer. Doctors close at their clinics at around 2 o'clock and say,
10 seconds.
Well, I hope I'll be able to talk a lot more about some of these issues a little bit later. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Joe, your 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, I'm Joan Isaacs, and I'm from the BC Liberal Party. Thank you to the Chamber for hosting the debate, and also to all the other candidates for attending, and of course, thank you for coming out this evening. I believe Coquitlam-Burke Mountain needs a strong and a committed voice in government. Someone at the table who understands the challenges that families and businesses face, someone who can get things done. I can get things done, and that's why I was asked by my colleagues and my community to run. As a relationship builder, I will listen to the mayors and the council, as well as my community, and work with all levels of government. My business experience includes over 30 years in the financial services industry. I was a business consultant, development consultant to small and medium-sized businesses and not-for-profit organizations. My community work includes youth and families, mental health, housing and homelessness, and restorative justice. I believe I have the economic skills and the right balance for families. I have lived in the riding for 30 years, and I know my community. In addition to public safety, I want to achieve 3 things. First, I will take full advantage of the Evergreen Line. My plan is Evergreen Plus. This means installing bike gates, making sure we have appropriate parking options, and identifying access points to ensure that families can get connected to the major transit hubs. Second, I welcome a sharing economy, giving British Columbians the freedom to participate in ride-sharing and house-sharing
30
opportunities.
seconds.
Third, I will continue to advocate for education funding, fight for new schools, and build on the $20.5 million investment in Smiling Creek Elementary. I will be a strong voice at the table with government to deliver results for Coquitlam-Burke Mountain. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Joe Keithley. Many thanks to the Chamber of Commerce, and especially to the citizens of Coquitlam coming out tonight. For the past 20 years, I have run a successful music management and record company, and I have negotiated over 100 contracts in that time. I've also helped organize and raise money for over 200 events that help charities and good causes over the years. From this, I have a lifetime of experience organizing people and getting the job done properly. I'm also a husband, a father of 3 grown, successful children. I'm running to be your MLA here in Coquitlam-Burke Mountain because I believe regular folks like us can make a real change together. One thing we need right now is open and honest government. If I have the honor of becoming your MLA, I will stand up for the people. The BC Liberals and the NDP only answer to the special interest groups that support them with large donations, namely big corporations and big unions. The Green Party would limit campaign donations to $1,000 per person, union, and corporation, and this would protect democracy. I'm going to work hard to help students, making sure that we get the funding for the schools we need in Coquitlam. And I'll fight for affordable post-secondary education, because I believe that education is a right, not a privilege. My friends, we need to stop our dependence on fossil fuels. We'll strengthen our economy and create jobs through green technology and by developing the high-tech sector. I'm going to fight for funding for more buses in Coquitlam. The government in Victoria is too short-sighted to take the lead on this. I'll also work hard to make sure that the Riverview lands are preserved and not sold off for condos and housing.
30 seconds. We
know that Christy Clark and the BC Liberals are falling further over the cliff every day. They're deleting important government emails, and their LNG pipe dream will never happen. Now they want to spend $10 billion in sightseeing and $5 billion in massive tunnel replacement. Money we don't have at this time. In this election, you have a choice. You can vote for real change. You can vote for the BC Green Party. My friends, together we can make a great difference here in Coquitlam and BC. Thank you.
And Jody, your 2 minutes.
Thank you everyone for being here, and thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for putting on this debate. My name is Jody Wickens, and I'm standing with the BC NDP to be your next MLA in Coquitlam-Burke Mountain. I was raised by very young parents who had very little money. Life was tough growing up, but they instilled very strong values in me. They taught me to stand up for what I believe in. They taught me that if you fight for what is right, you never stop fighting. In my early 20s, I met my husband, we fell in love, we started a family. My husband is a small business owner. In fact, he's a milkman. Yes, I married a milkman. Raising a family is tough when you're trying to build up a small business, but it was even tougher when my oldest was diagnosed with autism. So I went back to school to learn what I could to support my family and support others like mine. I graduated, I became a therapist working with families here in Coquitlam, I became a strong parent advocate, and eventually the executive director of the Autism Support Network. It was there that I saw firsthand that Christy Clark was failing families. It was clear to me that this government's only concern is helping those at the top. I'm running in this election because I couldn't sit back any longer. Our community has gone too long without a voice to stand up for them. Through my work as an advocate and as the executive director of the Autism Support Network, I have a proven track record for fighting for families and delivering results. My approach is the same approach that my parents taught me. Never give up. If those in power put in obstacles, you fight harder and you bring more people to your side. I will always put this community first. When you come with an issue to my door, it will always be open. If you put your trust in me, I will be a champion for Coquitlam-Burke Mountain.
Thank you. So that gives gives you a bit of flavor for those of you who haven't met any of the candidates previously, or who they are and what led them to turning forward today to stand for elected office. And now we're going to move into the questions that the Tri-Cities Chamber prepared, along with some of the others that Aaron behind me is going through, as we move through the conversation. And so in the spirit of maintaining some level of organization here today, we're going to go through the speaking order again and then open the floor to debate as well. And I think question number one is really about housing affordability. And the average single-family home value in Coquitlam has increased between 17 and 20% this year according to BC assessment. And what is your party's plan to make housing more affordable in Coquitlam and across Greater Vancouver? Paul.
Well, unlike the other parties, we don't want the government to hide things by trying to control prices. We think prices should be free to fluctuate. But there is something wrong with the price of housing in BC because there is a land supply shortage. And that's created solely by government and government regulations. Only 5% of the land in BC is owned privately. 95% is crown land. Of that 5%, half of it is restricted in something called the Agricultural Land Reserve. Well, look at the prices of food around the world. It's not going up, it's falling. There's no shortage of agricultural land. In fact, we're growing more and more crops on less and less land. Nobody's going to make $1 billion by buying land and keeping it for agriculture. Now, of course, you can make a few billion if you buy agricultural land near a city where it might grow in value, except in Vancouver, where it is politically, you've got to go and bribe somebody to get that land out of the agricultural land reserve to build housing on it. We have created corruption. Remember who started the agricultural land reserve? A guy who's kind of famous with Bingo Gate, Mr. Stupich. This is a program that was created solely to give money into politicians' pockets. So,
Paul, if we can pivot on that, and Joe, if you would like to respond to that, I think your statement.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I totally actually disagree with you, Paul. The big problem with the rising prices that the government has failed to step in, the BC government, BC Liberals, and actually react to this situation. I've been to Hong Kong, one of the most incredible cities in the world, and there the prices are even higher, but they keep control even where it is. They have taxes on foreign investment and on speculation, so we could come up with a couple of different taxes to keep the prices down, and actually so our kids actually have some place to live rather than having to put three families per house. The other thing too, we have a new federal government that is progressive, and you know what? We could get 3 levels of senior government involved, municipal, federal, and provincial, in building some co-op housing, so there's some rental places to go along with that. Thank you.
And sorry, Joe, I didn't get your vote that I mispronounced. I think you heard. I'm sorry. But I sort of, okay, I didn't mean to skip over.
Housing affordability is a real concern. The BC government is looking very hard at housing relief options. We're coming up to the February 16th budget, and we're going to make some consideration for the first-time home buyers. Earlier this month, the government raised the Provincial Homeowner Grant threshold to $1.2 million. That meant 91% of BC property owners were eligible for a $570 grant. I think we can also look at increasing the threshold on the amount of property tax that's paid for first-time home buyers that are looking to get into the market. We heard some talk this week about a proposal for a 1.5% tax on vacant residential properties. This is a possibility. I'd like to talk to the Premier more about that. But what I want to be very mindful of and make sure that everybody is aware of is unintended consequences. When we're looking for solutions, we want to make sure that we do not devalue the equity that's in someone's home. This is what's happened now in Alberta housing market. Just for example, if you bought a home for $400,000 and the government makes a move to lower the value of that home to say $350,000, you could end up owning a mortgage for $400,000 but only having a value of $350,000. So that just changes the terms of the mortgage, and it creates a whole other set of problems. The other thing is we want to protect the homeowner's equity, particularly for seniors who may be relying on that equity to help fund their next stage of life, or possibly borrow some of the equity to help their children enter the marketplace.
Joan, I'd like to pivot this and let Jody respond.
I think really when we're looking at the housing affordability crisis, what we need is balance. We need to make sure that people's investments are safeguarded, but we also need to make sure that life for families is more affordable and easier. Housing affordability is not the only issue. We have families who are buying homes, but then life is incredibly unaffordable for them after they buy those homes because of increased taxes, hidden taxes that this BC Liberal government has implemented on families like mine and yours. So we can buy a home, but then we can't afford to live because we have increased MSP rates, increased ICBC rates, increased hydro rates, while the BC Liberal government gives $1 million tax breaks, $236 million tax breaks to millionaires. Life for people like you and I becomes more unaffordable. So housing affordability is about balance. We need to make sure that there are innovative ideas being put forward, like the BC Housing Affordability Fund. This is something that the BC NDP fully supports. It would put a 1.5 property tax on foreign investment in empty house lots. And that's something that is a tangible, concrete thing that can be done today. Christy Clark and the BC Liberal government has been largely inactive on this, which means that families like mine can't enter the market. When families do enter the market, life becomes more and more unaffordable for them. And we've just seen no leadership so far on this. But now that there's an election around the corner, we're starting to see some action. We're starting to see some leadership on it.
So thank you, candidates. We've been through 5.5 minutes or 8 minutes, a lot of time for this. And now if you'd like to ask one another questions, please do so.
Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead, Joan.
no, I was just going to make a comment that there's two types of housing. There's affordable housing and then there's social housing. And social housing is different than affordable housing. We have to be able to do both. We can always do more in social housing, but I'm impressed with the amount of dollars that's already been invested right here in Coquitlam. Last year, BC Housing provided $7.4 million to subsidize housing and rent supplements, which were gone to 2,100 households. This supported 900 senior households and 1,100 family households. So there's a big difference between affording a house, going out and buying it and paying the expenses, and then the social housing concept as well.
And what we see with social housing is more and more being closed down, land being sold to developers, and then those social housing units not being replaced. And we have families and individuals who are vulnerable that can't afford to live and can't afford to rent. And so there is no leadership when it comes to social housing. There is no leadership when it comes to affordable housing. And we need leaders to step in and make viable solutions so that people can live in this province.
Joe?
Joan, you talked about the Premier doing something, the mic's gone off here. You talked about the Premier doing something about the housing crisis and affordability. Yes, it's obvious social housing and affordability are two completely different issues. I would agree with Jody that the BC Liberals have done almost nothing on the social housing aspect. And the other thing too is that Chris Clark's been Premier for 5 years. She's had all this time to deal with it. At the same time, how many people have not been able to afford a house, have moved farther out, maybe moved out of the province, away from their families, farther commuting? This has a social cost on everybody when you have to travel an hour, hour and a half to your job. So the Premier, I would contend and say to you, the Premier is doing absolutely nothing.
I would add that the 1.5% tax.
Sure, the mic's on.
Yeah.
That the 1.5% tax being put onto foreign investments could be then spent on more affordable housing.
It could be, and I'm open to having that discussion with the Premier. I think there's some good ideas to look at affordable housing. I'm just saying we need to be aware of unintended consequences. There have been some housing projects. I think the YMCA up on Como Lake is definitely a housing project. And you know why? One of the reasons that affordability is so challenging here is because BC is doing so well economically. because this is the most desirable place in BC to live. Everybody wants to live here.
But
This is
how-
why foreigners
how
are
does
coming
that-
here. This is why people are investing
So
in
Joe will give you the last comment here.
Okay,
Sorry,
sorry.
switch gears, go ahead.
If we're on the level of housing costs that in New York and San Francisco, it's the most expensive places in North America, how is that succeeding? I think that's like failing.
It's a good economy.
Spirit of debate, and we're going to switch to another topic which is near and dear to everyone's heart, which is transportation. And in particular, the Tri-City Chambers of Commerce would like to pose a question here that I think has two parts. One, moving away from the status quo, and at the same time trying to telegraph what the new federal government wants to do, and that simply is the recent transit plebiscite was defeated effectively 2-1 by voters. Municipalities in particular are left with little choice when it comes to funding transit and transportation infrastructure projects. And would your party consider altering the one-third model of funding infrastructure projects? And following our speaking order, Paul, to you.
Always alert. That we're rotating.
Oh, sorry, Joe.
Sorry, then can you just repeat what your actual question?
Yeah, absolutely. Would your party consider altering the one-third model of funding infrastructure projects, given the financial position that municipalities are in?
Probably not. The P3 contract works very well. Particularly if you're looking at something like Evergreen Line, this was a huge project, $1.4 billion project. We had a contract that was very responsible for taxpayers. It's a fixed price contract, so therefore any delays was not on the backs of the taxpayers. The companies that did the partnership paid for it, so I would say it's a good and working formula.
Paul, any comments on transportation for us?
Look at historically in some of the older cities where transportation systems came from. Somebody had an idea, they thought that they could serve the public. They put up their own money, and they found paying customers who were willing to pay for it, and they succeeded until the government said, oh, we don't like this price being so high. They put price controls on transportation, became a perpetual money loser, and governments took over these things. And that's kind of what happened in BC too. Remember, originally it was electricity companies, private ones, that ran the transport system until the government put price controls on these things that made it uneconomical. So we've broken these eggs, we scrambled it all up. Now we have a monopoly system that doesn't work very well. I'm a transit user. I've used transit all over the world in different cities. It doesn't work very well. How do we unscramble this? Well, there's suggestions. Let people opt out. Let people start their bus companies. Let them use government bus stops, and I bet you there's certain routes that private companies could run and make money, where the government's running the routes in the wrong system and don't make money. Don't we want drivers to have an incentive to try to serve customers as best they can? So we don't have to break the system. Just let people opt out. Allow competition with the government monopoly. Boy, I think all kinds of new types of services will creep up.
You know,
and so on.
Jody, I'd like you to respond
That's
to
the
that.
way to get out of our current horrible.
I'm on the doorstep every day and every night, and I'm hearing people talk about public transportation as a problem here in Coquitlam. What that means is that there's largely been inaction by the BC Liberal government to solve the problems of public transportation in this area. Christy Clark and the BC Liberals forced a referendum on public transportation. Then right around the corner, they announced that they were going to spend billions of dollars on a Massey Tunnel project. Why wasn't there a referendum for that? Coquitlam residents need reliable public transportation. They are calling for that, and this Liberal government has not provided it for them. As your MLA, what I will do is I will work with the stakeholders in this community, our locally elected MP, our City of Coquitlam. I will work with TransLink, and I will work with the people in this community that need transportation to come up with an advocacy plan. We need buses going out to the communities that need them and deserve them, and we're promised them. This BC Liberal government continues to make broken promises, opt for photo ops when it comes to the Evergreen Line. I think we can all agree that the Evergreen Line is a great thing, finally. But it isn't the be-all and end-all. There's going to be all kinds of challenges around that. There's going to be challenges getting people from their houses and communities to the Evergreen Line. There's going to be challenges with parking. These things aren't being addressed by this Liberal government.
Well, thank you, and I'll let
Yeah, I'll go back to that. I think the way to do it is, this discussion is already been had. We have a new Prime Minister, and the suggestion has been put forth to Trudeau that the formula could be altered, right? And I think it should be something like, could be like 90-10, so that the provincial and federal government would pick up 45% each, and the cities pick up 10. I had a meeting with Mayor Stewart 2 months ago to talk about this very problem. Okay, so the new SkyTrain's here. It's delayed by a year, we know that, but it should be here February, March next year, just in time for the election, obviously, right? We'll see. But the problem is that there's no plan to get, or more money to get buses, to get people on the SkyTrain, to get the cars up the Lougheed-Barnett corridor, to get them to their jobs, to reduce our carbon footprint. And it doesn't make any sense. So what's happening is when the SkyTrain was built to Surrey, the second extension went out there, when you parked your car, you didn't know if your car would be in one piece when you came back. And so the meeting I had with Mayor Stewart 2 months ago, and I also spoke with our new MP, Ron McKinnon, on this past Sunday, about this, was funding for an intermodal transportation hub here in Coquitlam, which involved more money to get buses to the SkyTrain, and places to charge electric cars, places for bike racks, and also a secure parking garage. So 2 things out of that. You come back from work or school, your car's in one piece. A woman goes into a parking garage at night, there's security there, she feels safe. And you know what? The Liberal government has no plan. They built super expensive SkyTrain technology. The mayor's argued against it. We have to go to the 90-10 formula because the mayors do not have any way of raising the money except raising your property taxes. Does anybody want that? No, it was sky high already with the new tax rates coming in this year. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll give it a chance to speak to the question once, and Joe, you, and then Paul. But Joe, I'd like you to respond first.
Okay, thanks. Well, first of all, the SkyTrain was delayed because Alice had drilling problems. Even the engineers were unaware of what was behind some of these walls. It had sinkholes, so of course we have to take safety into account and make sure that workers are not placed in an unsafe thing. But look, Evergreen is going to open in 2017. This is a $1.4 billion project that's going to move 70,000 passengers and take 40,000 cars off the road by 2021. This is great news for Coquitlam-Burke Mountain. Let's recognize that this is the largest, most expensive, most complicated project in this community's history, and we got it done on a fixed contract with no extra price to taxpayers for any kind of cost overruns. The next steps is what I call Evergreen Plus. And as part of government, this is what I will be doing. I will keep transportation costs down, making sure that taking transit is affordable and not eating into families' budgets. Transportation has to be affordable. The government did a great job protecting the taxpayer and managing that contract responsibly. It also has to be reliable. Transportation has to be reliable. That means more buses as well as the frequency of buses, so people are not waiting around.
To have more buses, you had to be some funding. The problem with the referendum, the government was, I would dare say, was very short-sighted. And rather than taking the lead on transportation, they bowed out.
You also have to have a plan for when things come, right? So we have huge communities being built. We have a community being built that has been built, people living in their communities with no buses. So what you're saying is now we're going to have a SkyTrain built and you're going to have a plan finally. The reality is that families don't have public transportation to access. They need buses
yes, they do. Before.
So Joe, we need to respond to that, and we need to Paul.
They do have transportation. As a matter of fact, I had the Minister of Transport or Minister of Translate looking at some of the routes. We do have to identify where those great access points are going to be to move people to the transportation hub. But look, you know, the NDP said no to Evergreen. They didn't even want Evergreen. This is going to be the hub of commuters in and out of the city. This is going to be bring economic development to the city. It's going to allow families to go outside of the city, get to work. It is the greatest, biggest project.
Just a second, Joe and Jody, we need to get Paul.
Paul, would you speak into the microphone, please?
Sorry, you guys can't hear me back there? Okay, try this. I had a quick, sharp reaction to what Joe said there. He wants to plan this. Well, these are people.
Go into the microphone. Put the
Still
microphone
can't hear me.
where you are.
There. Yeah, sure.
There's a reaction to what Joe said. He wants a plan. This is what's wrong with politics in BC, that somehow or other, all of a sudden, transit has to be run by politicians. They have to tell the engineers where to put the bicycle racks. They have to, why? Just imagine if there was a planner like Joe, who was giving us, we had to go to produce cell phones. Right? We had to go to a planner like this to say, okay, a cell phone has to have X and Y and Z on it. Well, just imagine what your cell phones would be like now. Remember how big they used to be? Well, that's the way a planner would have made them. We want innovation. We want people to try out different things and experiment and see what works. Top-down planning is not going to work. We want people to escape from the system. And that's not going to happen with a top-down plan.
Thank you.
Paul, what you're endorsing there, it would be complete chaos within the parking, mode of transportation, driving, walking, buses, bicycles. It would not work. It would be a complete and abysmal failure.
He wants us to all march in order, so we all do the same thing.
So clearly, thank you. Thank you, candidates, for that spirited debate. We're going to switch gears now and take a question from the audience as well. And Jody, I'll give you a chance to speak to this first. There's been a concern about per capita funding levels for school division 43 students. How does your party plan to support education in the Tri-Cities and the province? Jody.
Well, I'm a passionate advocate for public education. I have 2 children in our public education system. I'm the only person on this panel that's been in a classroom for this generation of students. The BC NDP fully supports increasing public education funding, and I think that we have real challenges here in Coquitlam with the lowest funding per student. What we see in Coquitlam classrooms is an education crisis. We have seen cuts to psych eds, we've seen cuts to speech and language pathologists, we've seen cuts to basic education for our students. And what that means is that we're not preparing them for the world and the economy, and we're not preparing them to be the best that they can possibly be. This Liberal government under Christy Clark does not value public education. We see that in our classrooms. I was on the doorstep just the other day talking to a teacher who told me that her classroom has to be evacuated weekly because they don't have the supports in that classroom for the students who need it. I have been a passionate advocate for parents, for families, and for students for years. I have stood up and spoken out and delivered results in our district to help support teachers, to help support students. The BC NDP needs, or this community needs people who will stand up for them. This community needs people who will stand up for public education. I've proven that I will do that, and I will continue to do that every day as your MLA.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think over the past 3 months I've probably knocked on 6,000-7,000 doors in Coquitlam. Met probably like close to a quarter of the people in the riding. And the #1 topic has been funding for education. I knew that before I got here and started knocking. You know that the Coquitlam School District is wildly underfunded. So some of the things have suggested that, you know, there's 3 or 4 things that we need. One is that the teachers cannot cope if they don't have enough help with special needs teachers. Okay, that's a prerequisite because they can't get all the kids that are learning at like an average rate. They can't teach them. Second one is we need more ESL teachers. That fund for that was cut by the BC Liberal government last year, which doesn't make any sense when we're talking about like immigrants coming into and integrated into Coquitlam and into Canada. The other thing too, strangely enough, the Premier yesterday, since the election was coming up, was something that I've been talking about for a long time, is kids learning coding in classrooms. They're doing this in Britain, Japan, China, so the kids understand programming, algorithms, that's the economy of the future, not LNG or mineral extraction. But the problem is, the Premier announces that there'll be like kids that were required to learn coding and teachers will be required to teach that, but there's not an extra dime in to do that. How do the teachers cope with this? We have great teachers, they're really smart, they're like the backbone of our community, but the government has stripped the education bare. And I will say one more thing here, Joan, is that when you look at the track record of Christy Clark as the education minister, you can rightly say she's pretty well being close to the #1 public school enemy here in Coquitlam. She doesn't care about the kids or the education system here.
Well, first of all, I don't think Ms. Wiggins is the only person that's been an advocate for her children at school. I had 2 children that went through the school system. I also worked with junior achievement programs for many years and had the opportunity to be in classrooms, working with students and working with teachers. And I have seen firsthand, and I understand the challenges that a classroom can take. And it really does take a special skill to try and deal with students, especially ones that have challenges, learning challenges, behavior challenges, physical challenges. Teachers have to provide emotional support to students as well. And educators not only deal with the students, but they also need to work with the parents. So it's a very, very challenging environment. So I appreciate what teachers do. The BC school formula for the per capita funding provides a protected rate, base rate for every student in the school district of British Columbia. The formula provides additional supplements based on First Nations or special needs students. Currently, Coquitlam has fewer First Nations and fewer children and students with other needs, and that's why the funding for per pupil is lower. I have not had the opportunity to speak to the Minister of Education on this, but I am scheduled to meet with him. I will work through that formula and the program funding to gain a better understanding, and I will work also closely with the school district trustees.
But we have
my focus,
Joni, just let her finish.
Yes,
We need
my
to
focus
apologize.
is with student achievement and outcomes. And BC is the highest in the country and 3rd in the world according to the Conference Board of Canada. And I am committed to ensuring that our kids have a quality education, but just as important, I want to make sure that they have the life skills that they need, that they can move on to the next phase of their life and take the proper steps to build their careers.
So thank you, Joe. We need to move on to the
We have had a BC Liberal MLA in this district.
So hang on, Jody, we're going to let Paul speak and then we'll open the floor for debate.
The number you should remember here is 12.5%. 12.5% of the number of people, the number of students in BC who have found a private alternative to the government monopoly. The government gives the school system approximately $8,000 in operating costs for every child. As a mental experiment, just imagine if the government, instead of giving that to the school, the government gave it to you, the family, and you had the choice about where to spend that $8,000 for your child. How many of you would actually still stay with that government system? Or how many of you would go out and find someone else who might be able to experiment and innovate and provide coding on their own, not because of some top-down government edict, but produce what children or what parents of the children are willing to pay for? Don't we want to make the system kind of listen to the parents, to produce what the parents want them to do? I don't want somebody sitting around like this and deciding, our kids should do X, our kids should do Y. I want to have options, I want to have choice. I want to free students from a single monopoly.
Thank you. So we'll open the floor to further conversation. Jody and Joe.
The reality is that we have had a BC Liberal MLA in this district for years that has done nothing to advocate for students and teachers in this district. And what we've seen and what we've heard, and what I've heard on the doorstep, is that we're struggling huge. And to have a liberal talk about completion rates is incredibly disrespectful to students here in this district. It's not a fair measurement of success, for one thing. And we see incredible challenges. Completion rates aren't also a measurement of what our school system is today. It's a measurement of what it was 10 years ago, and what we see are challenges with our students, and what we see is that they're not getting the education that they need and they deserve, period. We need someone who will be a strong fighter for these students. This is the future, our children's future. The cornerstone of our society is a strong education. We don't currently have that in British Columbia, and if you talk to any teacher, any parent, or any student, they will tell you that.
No.
What we have going on in the Coquitlam school system, I mean, Joan talks about the money being there on a per capita basis. Well, let's get with the reality here. Kids in Coquitlam at some levels are sharing textbooks. Now, the Premier says they should be learning coding. There's no resources for that. And it's also here's a really big question here in Coquitlam. We have on Burke Mountain the fastest growing area in BC. There are no schools up there. It's not like this also like just fast growing like it happened like 2 months ago. It's been building for years. And our do-nothing former MLA, Douglas Horn, did not initiate getting the schools there fast enough. I would say to you that the BC Liberals have fallen down the job. They have deserted our kids and deserted our teachers and our great public school system that we should be defending and building up because the kids are our future.
Thank you, Joe. In the spirit of timekeeping, Joe, I'll give you 30 seconds and Paul 30 seconds.
Let me just say, I am the MLA that gets things done, and I will get things done. The Smiling Creek Elementary has been approved. That's a $20.5 million elementary school up in Burke Mountain. I'm going to continue to fight for the middle and the high school. The conference, they are. My kids went on buses too.
No.
Everybody goes on a school bus. It's a challenge. It's a challenge, certainly for families. I was glad to see that Burke Mountain had organized their own school bus. It took matters to lead the situation. The population is growing. I recognize it's growing. It is a need. As I say, I had the minister up there to look at this firsthand, and I'm going to continue to advocate for all of that. With regards to the coding, though, that did not happen last week. That's not an election thing. That was innovation and modernization of a curriculum, and it was created with kids and teachers.
Thank you, Joan and Paul.
A couple minutes ago, Joan used the phrase unintended consequences. She was quoting from a Nobel Prize winner, Frederick Hayek, who was a libertarian. Another famous phrase from him was the fatal conceit. The fatal conceit is about people who know the best way to run the schools, the best way to run the transport system. Just listen to these guys. They know how we should do these things. They don't. We've got to free up people to experiment, to be able to buy from the best service. Again, just imagine, could these guys tell us what's the best way to build a car, or the best way to build a cell phone? We don't trust them with things like that. Why do we trust them with important things like education for our children or for transportation? Top-down monopolies just do not work.
Thank you, Paul, and we're going to switch gears again. Thank you, candidates. On the topic of another local topic, it is, I think, charged with a lot of opportunity, and that's the topic of healthcare, and specifically the new plan for Riverview. And the Tri-Cities Chamber of Commerce in particular is very supportive of getting a strong modern mental health presence on Riverview. Similarly, the community used to be complete with residential, commercial, and health-based development that all complement mental health and providing mental health services, while still preserving Riverview's unique and natural beauty. And how do you see your party contributing to that vision? And by my scorekeeping, Joe, you get to go first.
Right. Well, one of the things about the expanding healthcare bill, which eats up, I think, approximately 47% of the provincial budget at this time, right? And it's a chance it could go up to 50% within 10 years. And as we age, it's good into the 55%. And it's kind of a bit of a runaway train. We have to cut a few things that we really have to promote wellness and health amongst our citizens. That's the first thing. And the other thing too is every time somebody's got something slightly wrong with them, then perhaps we should have other types of healthcare specialists rather than doctors who do a great job. I'm backing the doctors in a lot of ways, but we need nurses and other healthcare specialists to take on some of these lesser ills, which would cut down the costs. And at the same time, build some other facilities that are not just every time you go to the emergency at Eagle Ridge Hospital, right? So, but the other thing too, I want to get at one topic like really briefly here, is the one thing we have to do is cut down the costs. The big issue here in the election is affordability. So one plan we've come up with the Green Party that relates to healthcare is to have MSP that collected on your income tax and do away with the separate bureaucracy that we have now and save you money. And it would also, it would be on a means-based test. I mean, I would say to you that why should anybody here who's earning an average income pay the same amount for their MSP as Jimmy Pass? I think that is wrong and has been, and we're the only province in Canada where we pay these outrageous MSP rates.
So we'll let Jody take a sip of water. There's some more there on the floor if you need some. But how would your party contribute to the vision of having a dynamic mental health service facility at Riverview while maintaining its natural beauty?
So I understand firsthand how mental health challenges affect a family. I've talked to moms and dads, I've talked to brothers and sisters that are affected by mental health every day. We have a mental health crisis in British Columbia that has not been addressed for some time. Riverview was closed down, and we saw that the supports and services that were needed for those individuals not given in our community as they were promised. This is another broken promise by this BC Liberal government. We need leadership when it comes to mental health strategy, and the announcement of 2 buildings and 17 new beds is not a hub of excellence. What we know is that there needs to be more done for mental health, and the BC Liberal government has fallen far behind when it comes to these services. We need leadership to connect with the people in our communities that know what's needed. We need to consult, and we need to actually have meaningful consultation and listen to what our community wants on Riverview. What our community here in Coquitlam said is that they don't want market housing on Riverview. The BC Liberals put out a report that stated that they were going to put market housing on Riverview. We do need a state-of-the-art mental health facility. I don't believe that the BC Liberals will make that happen. And I think that as an MLA, as an NDP MLA, I'm a New Democrat, and I am proud to be a New Democrat, because what that means is that we leave nobody behind. What that means is that we take care of the most vulnerable in our society. What we see right now with this BC Liberal government is that the most vulnerable in our society aren't being taken care of, and the way that they are being taken care of is at the most cost to you and I. It costs millions and millions of dollars to serve people on the downtown east side. That is not an effective strategy for mental health. We need people that actually understand mental health challenges. We need people that understand that you pay now or you pay later, but we are going to pay big if we don't come up with an innovative strategy to support people with mental health issues.
Thank you, Jody. Over to you.
I heard a contradiction in what Jody said there. A little bit earlier, remember she was talking about why we need affordable housing. And at any time somebody wants to build something on anything, these guys are opposed to it. We've got a jewel of a piece of land in the middle of our area. We've got people dying for housing, and we don't let people use that land for its highest value use. Now, just imagine, I think it's tragic, isn't it? We could have sold that land to the highest value use, paid a lot of money, and just imagine the legacy that could have been given to the people who have mental health problems in this area. Nope. People in that area wanted to keep it the way it is, and now we have to ask taxpayers to divvy up the little that they have. It's a tragedy here, isn't it? That could have been used for higher value use. There could have been lots of money left for people who have mental health problems, and yet, wow, we get this avoidance of the real issue that could have happened.
Thank you, and Joan, and then we'll open up for a spirited debate in this effect. Joan.
Well, I'm fully aware that we need to balance the interests of market housing and green space. I'm going to work with the mayors and the minister and the First Nations, whose traditional territory this falls in. I'm very pleased to see that we are moving forward with this project. Mental health affects everyone. And it's important to me because we need to support families and individuals who are impacted by mental health issues. This is a commitment of $175 million to construct 2 new buildings, which is going to provide over 100 mental health beds. The province has committed to the green space in 2 ways. They want to maintain as much green space as possible and to preserve the arboretum. The province has hired landscape architects to oversee the land use process, and they will provide reports and conduct studies on the tree viability. Protecting trees are really important, but we've just seen in Burke Mountain that we do have to be careful when we're protecting the environment, and we make sure we have that right balance. We want to make sure we do it right, and we want to make sure that the most important thing is the patients at Riverview, and we want to make sure that we are advocating for them.
So Joan, we're going to pause there for a second. Joe, you had your hand up. You wanted to interject the conversation?
Yeah, I think the thing about Riverview, and I have a close personal connection with this. My grandmother spent the last 12 years of her life there, and so as a lad, I would wander around the area and through the trees. And it's not just, you're talking about green space. It's like Riverview, some would call it the jewel of Coquitlam. You have 1,700 species of trees there. So that has to be protected. And at the same time, what we have to do is build an all-inclusive mental health facility that starts with the people that are having a really difficult time and might never leave care, and working their way through the system to other people that are going to go on and learn to lead a productive and fulfilling life. I know a little bit about this. My son is studying to be a doctor of clinical psychology in Toronto. So he would work with autistic kids, and we bring to our house, and it was wonderful. But what happened in this one case, this boy Owen, that my son looked after for 3 summers in a row, it was all good, but if anybody yelled, Owen could run across the freeway. When Owen became 19 years old, he's not considered a child. He was cut off of all his funding. And that is done by the provincial government, by the BC Liberal government, and Christy Clark. And we have kids dying in care, committing suicide. It is outrageous the way the government, Stephanie Cadu, the minister, has abandoned this file. And you know what? They have let down our most vulnerable citizens, and it makes me sick.
This is another example of political spin. You talked about 100-something new beds, but the reality is that beds are being closed elsewhere. When we talk about our mental health crisis, we need to have leaders that understand what that means. Riverview is a part of the solution. We need a facility there that's going to be state-of-the-art, but we also need to look at why we have such an increased rate in mental health in our youth, in our children. When you see cuts to services, to early intervention, to psychologists in schools, when children are not getting the services that they need as they're young, what that does is that increases mental health rates in our youth. And this government does not have a youth mental health plan. We need leaders in our community that will fight for that. We need leaders in our community that understand mental health challenges. And we've had BC Liberals in this community that have not fought or stood up for mental health.
I have been an advocate for mental health concerns for families and individuals. I know it's very destructive for families. 1 in 3 people suffer from some form of mental illness. It's very serious. We have to have the tools and the resources available at the time that people need them. There's going to be over 500 beds throughout BC for mental health. I think we can always do more. Because I am passionate about this, I'm going to work towards this and make sure that we can deliver those kinds of services to people when they need them.
There's a massive difference between doing better and doing almost nothing, and your government is doing almost nothing in this area.
So, Joe, we're going to let Paul finish off the conversation.
I'll step up for being that voice.
No? Fine, we're going to change topics. Thank you for that spirited conversation. And we're going to move to a question from the audience that's come in from 2 individuals. And I think Joan, you're up first now. What's your party's plan for the BC carbon tax?
What is our plan for BC carbon tax? Actually, I'm just looking for this. Do you want to go?
Joe, did you want to step forward and describe the carbon tax?
Sure. Absolutely. The problem with the carbon tax that way exists now is $30 a ton. And it's going to be, we should be raising it to $40 a ton, bringing more in line with world prices. Now, one thing, you can get credits if you, if you took like the forestry plants of the forest, and then you get credits that would bring down the government's carbon credits. There's a few things about this that the Green Party would change. One, we would take part of, rather than making it a neutral tax the way it is now, we would take the carbon tax and use it for transportation infrastructure. It seems just like an obvious thing to me. And that would be like the basics of it, right? That, so why, we have, also at their point, I'm sorry, the big thing is we need to take the carbon tax off of public buildings, schools, and hospitals. I think that is like ridiculous. They're being starved. Schools and hospitals are being starved of money and funding for what they need to do some of the most important things in our society. And they have the carbon tax existing on top of that, having to pay for that. It makes very little sense.
So we'll go back to Joan and Jody and Paul.
Okay, so BC is the only truly carbon neutral province, territory, or state in the continent. We're challenging other jurisdictions to meet us or beat us. Our carbon tax is working. Other provinces are following our example, following our framework. So I believe the carbon tax is a good thing, and that it remains something that we should keep in place.
Jody, over to you.
Well, I also believe that there's a problem with the carbon tax being revenue neutral. We need to take what the carbon tax makes and invest in green technologies and invest in our transit so that we can lower our emissions here in British Columbia. Christy Clark and the BC Liberals would have you believe that they have a good environmental record. The reality is that their policies have been the worst in history in regards to our environment. And so I would agree with Joe. I would say that the revenues from our carbon tax need to be put towards and invested in new technologies, and I support that, and the BC NDP would take leadership on that.
Thank you.
Well, I'm a libertarian. I don't really like taxes very much at all. I would think that people should pay for programs directly. We don't have taxes on food to make, and then have the government kind of decide what food we should buy. Just mess things up completely. So I don't like taxes very much, so this is a question of which taxes might be worse. So it's kind of like, would you like your finger cut off? Would you like your arm cut off? What's more painful? So if we're going to have a carbon tax, it's been revenue neutral so far, because other taxes like income tax do so much more damage to us. The idea of spending this money on green energy is the completely wrong thing. Essentially, all types of energy should compete against each other and let the buyer find out which gives the best bang for the buck. I definitely don't want experts up here to decide what kind of energy should come out of your lights here. Just imagine how much they messed up our education system and healthcare system. You want them to control energy too. So, no, I don't really like a carbon tax, but at least it's not as bad as an income tax.
So we're going to go to Joe, and then we're going to Jody and Joe thereafter. Joe.
So we do have a green economy.
Sorry, Joe, what is that?
Joe.
Yeah, sorry. I told you. 3 J's, right? And Paul. Okay, this is a really odd thing for me to say, but Gordon Campbell set up the carbon tax here and in British Columbia. At least he was thinking ahead. He talked about the carbon tax corridor type with California, and let's clean up and do our share. We've just seen the results at COP21. We finally have
worldwide agreement, although there's lots of arguing and lots of stuff to be worked out, where we are going to deal with what's probably the most immediate danger to our entire planet. And we have a premier who thinks that the number one thing we should be doing is LNG extraction, which is going to be raising our carbon footprint, not down. It doesn't make any sense at all. So I say that the funny thing about this, Gordon Campbell looks like a visionary. I'm like, I never thought those words would like, strike me dead now, God, it was like that kind of thing. This is impossible to fathom. But Christy Clark is anti that. There's one other point I want to get to too, where the BC government could and should take the lead, and the Green Party would do this, is that the government has the ability, the BC government, to have all vehicles that are government operated within the BC government and municipally and in the city of Vancouver to run on renewable energy. Trucks would run on biodiesel, little cars to shuffle people around would be like electric. We'd have charging stations everywhere. If BC Greens would push for having every single government vehicle within British Columbia on renewable energy by 2030 and make some sort of reasonable effort into reducing our carbon footprint while the world is heating up. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Joe, you want to go on that?
Say that BC does have a green economy. The BC Liberals do have a green economy. We are continuing with global leadership by implementing policies that support job growth, innovation, and environmental sustainability. We have world-leading water and land management practices. We're looking at ways to improve air quality. We're developing innovative ways to protect jobs in the environment. We have an initiative like Carbon Neutral Government, which demonstrates leadership in renewable energy, green building design, clean transportation, water and waste and pollution control. There are more than 200 clean technology firms that generated an estimated $1.7 billion in BC in 2014. These firms have already been recognized as global leaders in this industry, and our business incentives and support programs help with the clean technology and help those companies grow.
Okay, moving on, we're going to squeeze in a couple more topics here. And by my count, Joe gets to speak again, is briefly, if you wanted to talk about, with Coquitlam adding 600 Syrian refugees, in addition to normal immigration, that we were absorbing in the province, how does your party plan to help integrate these new residents with the local provincial economy? Joe.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And you know what, I think there's a couple of issues here with refugees. And one, we have to help the Syrian refugees that are coming in, of course. It's like our duty as human beings. This is one of the things that makes Canada different than a lot of places, and I believe, and it sounds a little bit funny, but it makes us better than our friends and cousins to the south, is that we care about other people, and that's a prerequisite to being a Canadian. So to help the Syrian refugees, I think, is like a really important thing to do. At the same time, we also have to make some plans to help other refugees that are here already. So they are being starved of funding. And so if you think like refugees from 200 countries on the face of the earth, and many of them are poor and destitute, and they come from arrive here with just the clothes on their back. So we have to put money into the system. Now the other thing too, that here is that this goes back to, let's talk about schools and ESL teachers, which the Liberal government cut last year, was that, okay, if we want people to live and integrate and become valuable members of society, productive, and have a happy life here, we have to get them speaking English and learning that as the predominant language here in British Columbia. Otherwise, people end up living in little ghettos. It becomes a ghettoized society, and that's not the way to build a common thing where we all feel together as Canadians. So we would put money into housing and into ESL teaching and into training for jobs. The other thing too, one last point, sorry, is that one of the things I think we should work on, and we have a lot of discussions here in Coquitlam-Burke Mountain, particularly with the Parsi speakers, Iranians, that a lot of them are, and this goes for like the Mandarin-speaking people and Korean, are very, very educated, and they arrive here, and the professional associations within BC and Canada do not allow them to practice their trade. So you have a doctor as a barista, you have like a nurse as a waitress. Now, nothing wrong with being a waitress or a barista, you know, that's all well and good, we need that. But if we've got these people with skills, we should be using their skills. I mean, why would a math teacher who knows how to teach mathematics in Iran not be able to teach mathematics here? Don't the numbers all work the same way?
We get your point. Jody. Thank you.
So I am incredibly excited that we have a diverse culture, especially here in Coquitlam. BC sees 38,000 newcomers to BC every year. And with us opening our arms to Syrian refugees, you know, I'm excited for the things that they're going to bring here for us to learn. The challenge is going to be that these people are incredibly vulnerable, and they're going to need the supports and services in their community to allow them to live and thrive. And so in my work and in my experience, what I'm really good at is making sure that I bring people together, that I support navigators in our community that will help these newcomers access the supports and services that they need and deserve to be meaningfully included in our community. Now, one of the challenges to that is going to be the fact that this BC Liberal government has stripped services to help newcomers. So we have seen strips to our English language classes, we have seen adult basic education funding taken away, and so it's going to be incredibly difficult to support these vulnerable people if they don't have services to help them thrive and live in our communities. I will be a strong MLA that will open my constituency office to work with our community leaders to make sure that these individuals and these families have the supports and services that they need so that they can be a part of our community, be in our businesses, have meaningful employment, and I don't see that happening with another BC Liberal MLA.
Paul, over to you.
I find it kind of amazing how generous politicians are with other people's money. I look upon refugees as a challenge to you and me. How much can we, out of the volunteer out of our hearts? How can we help? I don't think I've helped enough. I'm trying to help. I'm very, one of my co-workers comes from Syria, so I kind of know what's going on in that country. I know how he got his mother out. I try to help, but I don't want them to be generous with your money. This is false charity. Charity has to come out of your own hearts. And I really do not like people being generous with other people's money. Thank you.
Joan, over to you.
Thank you. Well, I agree with Joe. It's the humanitarian thing to do. We have people in crisis, and we're a compassionate nation, and we need to do something to help them. I'm really happy to see our local city and the community come together to help refugees. So we have put money forward, and we are putting money forward. We have a support plan for Syrian refugees, which started in December. This includes $500,000 to fund response teams to plan for the settlement of the refugees. It includes $500,000 to Immigrant Service Society to connect providers with refugees, to set up support clinics, assist in trauma care, and much more. And up to $1.5 million through Canada BC Jobs. This is a grant to assist refugees in gaining employment. I agree with Joe too. There are going to be incredible skilled workers that are going to be coming, and we should take advantage of that and go through the provincial nominee process wherever we can. But we need to recognize that people do come to the country, have wonderful skills, and that just furthers of our economic development.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the next question. There is an end to this, so don't feel like you're going to be here at 10 o'clock. We're going to go to one more question, and we're going to go to your concluding statement, so just that you're aware of that. And Jody, you get to address this question first, and that is, British Columbia will lead the nation in economic growth this year. We have the most diversified trading economy in Canada. And the simple question from the Tri-State Chamber of Commerce is, how does your party plan on increasing the diversity in our provincial economy, and what role do you see Coquitlam and the Tri-States playing in that plan?
in seeing a strong economy for my children. I think that a diverse economy is going to be important for their futures. When the economy struggles, family struggles, and when family struggles, we see small businesses in our community struggle. And we do need diverse options for our economy. BC Liberal government and Christy Clark has put all of their eggs in one basket as far as I'm concerned. We are building a $9 billion Site C dam that has not been through an independent utilities commission to see if we actually need this in British Columbia. What that means is that $9 billion is going to have $9 billion is that money is going to have to come out of my pocket. It's going to have to come out of your pocket. When that money should be spent on things like investing in green technologies, investing in the retrofitting of buildings. The BC NDP has a great Power BC plan that looks at how we're going to diversify our economy and how we're going to make sure that we are building a brighter future for our children. Really, at the end of the day, what this comes down to is priorities. What we've seen with this BC Liberal government is the highest debt rates in history. BC is $30 billion more in debt than it was when Christy Clark started, and I'm not sure how we are going to get out of that with the declining dollar, but what we need is leadership on the matter. We need people like me and you coming together to build up our communities and our businesses. Families are struggling. They're struggling to spend money in local businesses, and when we make life more affordable for families, they'll spend in our business and we'll see the local economy thrive.
Thank you, Jody. Paul.
If you want to create a diverse economy where all kinds of new jobs rise up, we've got to get rid of our single most destructive policy, and that is our $10.45 minimum wage law. I get off the bus at Main and Hastings and I sit there and I keep thinking, how come no entrepreneurs are sitting down there hiring all these kind of unemployed workers? Well, think about this. Can you think of a job that you could employ these people at? If you've got to pay them $10.45, you've got to think of some way of using them that you could earn more than $10.45. Because the job is not a gift. The job is a contract that both people have to gain from. So if by law you have to pay $10.45, you've got to think of some way of creating some service for someone that they're willing to pay $10.45. Now, I'm old enough to remember my first job washing dishes at $1.65 an hour. No, it wasn't too much fun, but that was a step towards something better. Right now, by creating this horrible minimum wage law, economically illiterate law, we're making it illegal for people who have skills worth less than $10.45 an hour from working. We're creating unemployment among the people who need a start in life. So you want to create a diverse economy, there's a fantastic place to start. Get rid of the minimum wage law so that people who have low wage skills can find something to do.
Thank you. We're going to go to Joan, then we're going to Joe, and then we're going to start our concluding statements just so that you're all aware. So Joan, over to you, please.
Thanks. I just have to state the record for Site C because I don't think that was represented accurately. Site C will provide 10,000 jobs, and there are 600 or so that are already working on it. BC's electrical supply was 97.9% renewable and clean for the year ending March 2015. 97.9% renewable. In 1986, Expo 86, most of us were here, the population of the Lower Mainland was 3 million. Today, it's 4.6 million. So it's grown dramatically, and we have to be able to supply power, and we need sites like Site C in order to do that. But I do want to speak about the diverse economy. The BC Liberal government has a fantastic diverse economy. We provide opportunities in technology, LNG, Site C, and the green economy. In technology, last month the government created a $100 million venture capital fund. That is aimed at growing this very, very fast-moving sector. It's going to create jobs, and it is going to strengthen a diverse economy. We also unveiled a multi-year tech strategy that will support further growth in BC. The technology sector alone directly employs more than 86,000 people, and the wages for those jobs are 60% higher than the industrial average. BC's technology sector is growing faster than the overall economy, 4.7% for the sector versus 3.2% for the economy. In 2013, the technology sector added $13.9 billion to the revenue of BC. So this is a very diverse, growing economy thanks to the British Columbia.
Just getting back to creating jobs, the BC Liberal Party, they're talking about creating jobs through Site C Dam. That's a $10 billion boondoggle that is not necessary at this time. We have more than enough power to go around, and the jobs will be short-lived in the construction industry. I realize that's a great thing if you're drawing like a good wage being a construction worker, but when the facility is up and running, you employ very few people. The same thing goes for any LNG project, if indeed one ever happens. So the government said at the same time, rather than investing in diversifying our economy even more, in the face of, look, oil has dropped by 60%. This has forced down the price of LNG. Is it going to come back up in the next couple of years? No. You people from the Scotiabank and RBC say, no, it is not. Resource development prices are way, way down. So the government is depending on this to prop up the treasury, but it's not happening. They're spending $10 billion on the Site C Dam, $5 billion on the Massey Tunnel, when government revenues are dropping. Projected over the next 4 years, 70% of revenue in licenses and LNG tax will drop. So they're depending on the PTT, the property tax transfer, to finance their expenses, which doesn't make any sense when we can't afford to buy a house. But back to the question, diverted off there, because everybody else spoke to this. The Green Party would promote jobs through green technology, solar, wind, geothermal, and something I've been talking to everybody in Coquitlam when I knocked on the doors, right? You know, if they got an older house, one of the things that an older house, you know, 10, 20, 30, 40 years old is not properly insulated. If we gave like a very generous tax grant to every single homeowner that needed it and to public buildings, you know what? Then we reduce our carbon footprint by 50% across this province, okay? And we'll also create jobs. And you know what would be great? Because with the big issue here coming up in this by-election and the general election is affordability. It would save you, the homeowner, money if we just took a practical step like that. Thanks.
So, Jody, just pause there for a second. We do have to get wrapped up, so I just want you to start to think about your concluding statements because we're going to go there away. Because we actually do have a time limit on this room. And based on the speaking order where we're at right now, Jody, I'm going to ask you to speak first, so if you want to collect your thoughts. And so each of you will have 2 minutes, which we will, in the spirit of fairness, hold you to, and I'll give you a 30-second notice for that. And in conclusion, there's a couple of final remarks, but you could pause and help me thank the candidates for being, I think, respectful of one another. And I think the spirit of so, Jody, if you would like to start with your 2 minutes beginning now.
This election isn't about me. It isn't about Joe, it isn't about Joan, and it isn't about Paul. It's about you, and it's about your loved ones. It's about knowing that February 2nd, after the votes are cast and the results are in, that you have someone who is on your side. My opponent, Joan, has tried to tell you that Christy Clark has your best interests at heart. That she has made announcement after announcement, funding announcement after funding announcement. Joan herself has tried to tell you that what we need is another Liberal MLA. I'm here to tell you that anybody running for a party that supports a $236 million tax cut to millionaires, while those of us and small businesses in our community struggle to make ends meet, is not working to be on our side. We deserve better than that. My commitment to you is that your MLA, I will make a difference. People with power tell people like you and I all the time that it's useless to fight for change. I've never let that stop me before, and I'm not about to let it stop me now. I'll fight to get schools built in Burke Mountain. I'll fight to ensure that the children get the funding in their education system that they need and deserve. I'll fight to ensure that new bus routes are delivered in communities that sorely need them. And I'll fight this government to the nail every day to put more money in your pocket and businesses in our community. I've had enough empty promises. Our community deserves a champion who will
30
always
seconds.
fight for us. I'd like to thank the Chamber of Commerce for putting this debate on today. I'd like to thank Joe, Joan, and Paul for being here as well. But most importantly, I would like to thank you for taking time away from your families. My name is Jody Wickens. I'm your NDP candidate, and I hope I can count on your vote on February 2nd and in advance polls.
Paul, your 2 minutes, please.
Okay, it's going to be easy to remember me. The only name that doesn't start with a J. You can pick up my brochure at the back, a little bit about the Libertarians, or go to our website, libertarianism.bc.ca, and you'll get our long program, lots of libertarian ideas about almost anything you can think of. Libertarian's favorite choice. I don't want to break the system. I want to be able to kind of opt out and make things a little bit better. So just imagine what would happen to our car insurance prices if we just allowed people who wanted to buy from somebody else instead of ICBC. And at the same time, we got to make sure ICBC doesn't get subsidies from the rest of us. If they had to stand on their own feet, I think we'd quickly die. All kinds of other programs that our government subsidizes or forces on us are not serving us well. How do we move from what we have now into a system which creates all kinds of incentives for people to come up with new ideas and experiments for making things better? Again, think about how your cell phone has changed over the last 20 years. Not because somebody top down knew what was the best way to create a cell phone for you, but because we let people experiment and try things out. The people who first tried these cell phones paid a lot of money. Didn't hurt us when they paid a lot of money for those first cell phones. They helped us. Because the companies who learned what people wanted brought the prices down and succeeded. Why can't we get the same sort of ideas going in education and healthcare? There are some good people stuck in these systems. They want to innovate, but we don't have a system that allows them to do that and succeed. We're fortunate. So many teachers and doctors, despite being in this evil system, are able to do what customers want. I want to free them up. So remember, you have a chance to make a big statement this time. Vote for a Libertarian. It's not going to change the government, but boy, it's going to make people listen to a whole bunch of new ideas, and I think it's time for that to be heard.
Thank you, Paul. Joan, for 2 minutes.
Thank you. I believe my business background, my knowledge, and experience consulting to businesses and my community work provides the right balance for families and business. I have the financial piece, I understand the challenges of business, understand the pressures families face, and I also know the important role that not-for-profit organizations provide to the community. As an exceptional relationship builder and a person that gets things done, I can make a difference. I can create a positive outcome, and I can be an effective voice in Victoria. We've talked about a lot of things here tonight, and many of these things affect all of us in one way or another. BC has the strongest economy in the country, according to the Conference Board of Canada, and that is not by accident. We have a vision, we have a plan, and we are building opportunities for every British Columbia in the province. We have the lowest taxes, and this year will be our fourth year of a balanced budget. None of the things that we've talked about tonight can be afforded unless we have a healthy economy. We can only deliver services if the economy is healthy. I want to keep taxes low and keep your money in your pocket. Raising taxes and taking money out of your pocket is not a plan. The NDP said no to the Evergreen Line. They consistently oppose any large infrastructure project and do not understand the cost benefit of protecting taxpayers when negotiating P3 contracts. They are not builders, they have no plan, and they cannot manage the economy. The BC Liberals will continue to build a diverse economy, investing in jobs and economic growth opportunities, and secure the future for the next generations. I want to provide you and your children every opportunity for a better quality of life right here in Coquitlam-Burke Mountain. And it all starts with a strong economy.
Thank you, Joan. Thanks, Joan. The last 2 minutes is yours. Over
wisely, I hope. My friends, with this by-election, we have a chance to make history. We can elect the first Green MLA from the Lower Mainland. This is a great opportunity to work towards honest and open government that actually listens to voters. If I'm elected and I join Andrew Weaver in Victoria, that will be the start. The BC Green Party has a very good chance to win 10 seats in the 2017 general election. And then, the Greens would really make a big difference in the minority government situation. When that is the case, the Green Party will work towards proportional representation, which our Prime Minister has talked about. That would really help the voters have their say. Grassroots democracy is an issue I care deeply about. Other really important issues I care deeply about and would fight for, we need more support for small businesses. It's the driver of our economy. Instead of the BC Liberals, they help big businesses. We need to help our seniors. Let's help the people that built the greatest country in the world. We need to put a lot more money into K-12 schools. These kids are our future, we know that. We need adequate funding for transit in Coquitlam. It's not happening. And it's time for lower costs for daycare. We also need to have affordable post-secondary education and need to create jobs in Coquitlam through green technology, and we need to foster the high-tech sector. I spent my entire career standing up for good and just causes like women's rights, environmental issues, union rights, First Nations rights. And I have organized and stood against tuition fee hikes, racism, and weapons proliferation.
30 seconds.
If I have the honor of being elected, I will stand up for the people of Coquitlam by putting them first. In the Green Party, we will not have whip votes. We will vote for Coquitlam and the people here. Together, we can make a great future for Coquitlam, BC, and Canada that make a great difference for every citizen, not just a few. Our choice in this election is clear. You can vote for the divisive politics of the past, or you can vote for the BC Green Party. My friends, together we can, together we will, and together we must make this world into a better place. Thank you. I'm Joe Keithley.
So would you help me thanking our candidates this evening for making this work? Before we go, I wanted to mention 3 things. I'd like to thank Douglas College for making this venue available to us today. If you're not a member of the Tri-City Chamber of Commerce and want to participate in more of these programs, talk to this young, handsome fellow right here, Mike Hine, Executive Director. He'd be happy to sign you up. And also, please vote on February 2nd. Thank you for adjournment.